If you have topics you would like to have us discuss on the Aging Well podcast, please click on the links in the episode description to send us a text or record your message or comments. We'd love to hear from you and how we can help you age well. If you benefit from the Aging Well podcast and would like to support the content financially, please click on the Support the Show link or support our affiliates and advertisers. Welcome to the Aging Well podcast. I'm Jeff Armstrong here with Corbin Bruton. In this and the episodes that follow, we will share candid discussions on aging and hear from the experts. We are here to inform and encourage as we experience, aging. In today's episode, I am joined by Carmine Arpaia, fitness director at a continuing care retirement community on Long Island. We will talk about fitness and aging, boxing for Parkinson's patients, and Carmine's Law. And of course, aging well. Carmen, welcome to the Aging Well podcast.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
If you could just kind of start by telling us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. My name's Carmine Arpaia. I am a certified fitness trainer. Actually, I'm an elite trainer these days, and that just means that I'm old and I've been doing this for a really long time. As you know, we all have continuing education requirements, so I've assembled quite a list of things that I do. But my main emphasis these days has been working with older populations. I am currently on a temporary leave of absence, but I work as a fitness director at a continuing care retirement community here on Long Island. That unfortunately, Jeff, I didn't get their permission to use their name, but I will tell you that it is one of the higher end CCRCs, continuing care retirement communities, on the east end of Long Island. We serve the very upscale population. Approximately 450 people live in the community. I oversee a slightly reduced staff now, but at its peak pre-COVID, it was myself and 8 other trainers working in various functions. And my responsibility was to develop programming, to obviously hire, to oversee classes, training of new trainers that would come on. Budgets and the whole, boring business aspect of it. The real thrill for me was that I had come from coaching high school sports. I was a high school baseball coach for quite a few years. I was also a girls' high school basketball coach, if you can believe, a 5'7" girls' high school basketball coach.
Especially a wrestler.
It occupied my time because at the time I was coaching, I had a son who was high school wrestling as well. So I would go coach the girls, and then I would fly out of there and go watch my son. You probably know a little bit about that. It's hard to concentrate on match day. But my great surprise when I took this job coaching, older adults, was how similar the theories were for high school kids and older populations. I was actually advised to expect a lot of differences. And while there were a few, I found way more similarities than I did differences in the populations. Everybody wants to improve. Everybody wants to learn. Everybody wants to be engaged. Everybody wants to have someone in an area of expertise help them along. And it didn't matter if it was a kid trying to learn how to hit a curveball or someone trying post-rehab to get rid of the walker. There's a set of protocols. There is a goal. There is a commonality between the trainer and the individual, and you work toward it. And just like in any other coaching situation, on those days when you have success, it's a rush. It's, I mean, there's nothing better than me at this stage of the game hearing from someone in our community saying thank you. What you did really worked, and to see them even post rehab continue to come to the gym, continue to engage themselves in classes, just as if it was playing bridge, or playing a mandolin, or any other activity. It becomes an ingrained part of their life, and they join the community, man.
Yeah. So
So,
you mentioned the CCRC.
yeah,
Can you tell our listeners a little bit more about that? Because I think some of our listeners hopefully are beginning to look forward to their retirement years, or maybe they're looking for their parents' retirement years, and what kind of communities we should be looking to live in that can help
sure.
us to age successfully.
Okay. The community that I work in, it's known as a CCRC, a continuing care retirement community. And it was built with the express goal of providing all levels of living to people within a retirement community. The initial members of the community all come in living as independent living people. Their options are to live in um, a cottage, and we have 106 cottages, many of them right up on Long Island Sound on the bluffs. I mean, just spectacular living, arrangements within the community. We have a community center, which houses approximately 200 apartments, 1, 2, and even 3 bedroom. We had for a while. I'm not sure if they haven't been refurbished. It's not a big call for 3 bedroom apartments and retirements, but we had an assisted living. We have an assisted living area, a full scale nursing home, a memory care unit for people with, cognitive issues, and a short term rehab. And what this all encompassed approach did was it allowed a couple to move in their early stages of retirement into a community. Some people even continued to work while they lived there. But while they lived there independently, we had 5 different restaurants within the building. We have an auditorium that pipes in the Metropolitan Opera live. We're one of the
Wow.
few places in the country that does this. So we provided a full range of activities and entertainment and food, and we have a French chef that heads the place up. And it allowed these independent living people to immerse themselves in a vibrant community. One of the things that I used to kid people when they would come to the gym would be that they didn't come here to die, they came here to live. And in fact, that is exactly what transpires there. And as time inevitably takes its toll, if one or both of those members should need a different level of care, perhaps one needs assistance that the other can no longer provide. They can still live within the same community, but perhaps one of them would be living in the uh, assisted living area, where people would be, helping them with meal preparation, or cleaning their room, or just helping them transport from areas of the building. Husband and wife could continue to flow within the community and still see each other. They can continue to spend time with their friends in any of the activities that they were actively engaged in prior to that. And it takes the worry and the responsibility of additional care off of the other partner. And it really does allow a sense of relief and freedom for these people to continue their lives um, with a little less stress. The interesting aspect of this is that uh, in good times, the community is just a thriving, wonderful place. In difficult times, it's a lifeline. It just becomes this place where I didn't realize how great this was until I needed help. Unfortunately, at some point in life, we all need help. And it's good to know that there's a comfortable surrounding and a qualified staff that can continue to provide, those needed services. The company is award winning um, on an annual basis. It's one of the finest places to work. It's wins awards in all kinds of, best nursing homes in the country awards and things along those lines. And it's really a credit to the culture that was installed and the fact that we had such great continuity within the management ranks. People like working there. They like coming in. And for my particular case, I went in as a teacher, and I realized very, very quickly that I was learning a whole lot more than I was teaching. It really was. I'm 64 years old now, and I was learning how to age successfully. I was learning that there were people who were doing it right, and I was observing that there were people who were doing it wrong. And you try to help people who you see are struggling, but in my particular case, I was soaking it up like a sponge with the people who were doing it right. And these people became friends of mine. They became, someone that I could learn from and apply going forward. So the rewards of the place are just enormous on a daily basis. They really are.
I discussed my epigenetics test with True Diagnostic co-founder Hannah Wendt in episode 162. Epigenetic testing measures baseline and changes in your pace of aging, giving you the power to steer your anti-aging or health and wellness journey in the right direction. I learned that I am aging well. Click on the affiliate link in the episode description, use the promo code AGEWELL, and receive a 12% discount on your epigenetics test and monitor your pace of aging. Yeah, that's where I think you and I are very much alike, among other things that we've talked about in our recent conversation. But that idea of aging successfully and really watching, observing other people in the process of doing that and learning from them. I'm not quite to your 64 yet, but I'm hitting 59 here in another 2 months, so I'm getting close. And it's really interested in that concept of the CCRC, because that's kind of the environment that my in-laws were in. They're from Long Island as well, but they moved from Oyster Bay down to Florida, like probably half the population of aging New Yorkers does. And they moved into a community similar to that, where they have the cottages and then they can move into the apartments. And my father-in-law, unfortunately passed of Parkinson's disease, but he had, the blessing of being able to move into that more assisted care environment. And my mother-in-law was able to visit him on a regular basis and see him daily and kind of, be engaged more in his treatment and, everything that was going on. Family could see him more easily. And, it was a really, really good environment for them. And then once he passed, she still had the community, where I think a lot of people who maybe retire and they're kind of living on their own, maybe close to family, but not necessarily living with people, or they just simply go into a nursing home. They kind of lose that community that can be really helpful in allowing them to continue, so that they don't end up like that couple that the one passes and then the other one passes a few months later because they're so lonely.
We have a lot of, obviously, family that visits us, and a common theme. And by the way, Jeff, you're a trainer and a coach, and we're like priests. I don't know, but people seem to tell us things that they won't tell everybody else. And the times that I spend in a gym with people, especially in a one-on-one basis, they may as well be in a confessional. Some of the heartfelt conversations that we have, but a common theme that I hear a lot from the members who live here is, I never wanted my children to have to worry about me. And then conversely, when the children come in and they'll always pull me aside or any of the other trainers and say, "How's mom doing?" They want to make sure everything's okay. But the children conversely tell us, "Thank you very much. I don't feel guilty when I leave here. I don't feel like we've dumped mom and dad.
Yeah.
That mom and dad are living better than they were, when they were trying to make sure that the roof didn't leak and that the washing machine was still working in that house that they could barely climb the stairs in anymore. And that's a real source of pride and satisfaction for me in particular, because we're not mailing it in. We're doing it right. There's a way. I'm compensated outside of money in situations like that, and it's as tiring as the job can be, and as mentally taxing as it can be, because inevitably you come in on a Monday and somebody died over the weekend, and those are hard facts. But knowing that we are keeping people living independently longer, that we are engaging the people in the nursing home, that we're sending trainers over to the memory care unit, and act literally, you can see the life come back in people's eyes when one of our trainers goes in there and engages somebody, and they find a comfort zone with them. I don't know if you saw recently on 60 Minutes, Tony Bennett singing. Tony Bennett had full blown Alzheimer's and didn't know his wife's name. And they did a quick, segment, a 20-minute segment with Tony Bennett and Lady Gaga, who just adores him and has done some duets with him. And she came in and they said, look, Tony doesn't know his name. And she said, do you think he could sing a song? And his wife said, I don't know. So they began to play. And she said, Tony, how about you and I sing? And I don't remember the name of the song. I'll begin it. And he said, okay. And she began it. And the life came right back into his eyes, and they just picked up where they had left off. And they had activated a portion of his brain, his cognitive abilities, his passions that brought him alive again. And there's a lot we don't understand about aging in the brain, but one of the things we do know is that the more engaged people are, the more likely they are to be their best version of themselves. And while I don't claim to be Lady Gaga, I can tell you that when our trainers get to those people who have not been engaged, and they can light any kind of a spark for that short period of time, they're alive again. And that's huge. That's just, for us, that's the holy grail.
That's awesome. Let's talk a little bit about exercise programming.
Sure.
And so tell us a little bit about kind of your philosophies of working with the older population. Mm-hmm. And I definitely want to get to some of what you've been doing with the boxing and Parkinson's, because I think the listeners would really love to hear that. So.
Okay. I was fortunate enough, in 2016, we underwent approximately $40 million expansion in the facility. And a large portion of that, the CEO of the company is very, very pro exercise in his mentality, and believes that we can keep people living independently longer that way, and that makes not only good moral sense but good economic sense for our business model. So he gave me input into the design of the gym, which was really cool because I'd never built a gym. I'd worked in a million of them, but I had some input. I could make decisions on equipment, on what I wanted, what we didn't want, on the layout of the room. We have a massage room. We have an Olympic pool. We have a studio where we teach classes, and we have just one of the finest gyms on Eastern Long Island, bar none. Not just in a senior living community. I mean, any gym. At our height, we did about 23,000 visits a year to the gym within the community, which is about 450 a week. I think most gyms would die for those kind of visits. But in our programming, we operated under a philosophy that I adopted while I was preparing to teach in senior populations. And people used to laugh and call it Einstein's second theory, but it was Carmine's theory. And my theory was that posture times strength equals balance. And the reason we thought that was the overriding goal of what we were going to teach is because it quickly became apparent that falls were the greatest threat to the quality of life of an independent living person. And that we used to laugh. We used to buy a lottery ticket for people if they would come to us and say, I almost fell this morning. And we would go out and one of us would go buy a $1 scratch off and bring it to them and say, hey. And they would say, why are you doing that? I said, today's the luckiest day of your life. I said, because you coming to the gym may very well have provided you the split second you needed this morning to not fall. I don't know that it did, but I know that you didn't fall. And I know that you're on this track. And I think that today's a very fortunate day for you. So you go scratch that thing off and you keep coming to the gym and let's see if we can't continue our lives. Because in that split second at this age, you can go from planning to having lunch with your friends to being in a hospital. And it could just be because you slipped coming out of the bathtub. And so we believe that the two aspects of posture at their core are people's posture and people's strength. And if they are properly postured and strong enough to spend the majority of their time in those postures, that we will greatly reduce the risk of falling. So our curriculum taught a lot of yoga, a lot of balance classes, a lot of balance therapy. And then we did some, classes for people in chairs that were still trying to gather the strength that accentuated these as well. The number of incident reports that we began to fill out every week, and every time somebody falls or something happens in one of our classes, we have to fill out an incident report and report to the superiors, the powers that be, what happened, what we did, what the cause was, what we think we can do to avoid it in the future. The number of those reports from 2016 on, when we got into the new gym, dropped substantially. So we were very, very encouraged by that. And that posture times strength equals balance mantra carries over into everybody's classes. And when I would review the class curriculums that they would wanted to submit, that was the first question I'd ask. What does this do for posture and strength? What does this do for balance? What does this do to prevent falls? That's our focus. Our focus is not to build an Olympic swimmer in that pool. Our focus is to increase that person's cardiovascular and their plane and their posture in the water, so that when they get out and they're stronger, that carries over into their life. So everything that we did was geared toward that goal. Everything else is little accents on the margin. Somebody's got a different way of doing it, and I think that's wonderful. And we've done some very, very unique programming. We have an outdoor a water program where people are kayaking, people are stand-up paddleboarding, we take them clamming because we're in some of the seafood capital, the seafood beds that of Eastern Long Island are just spectacular. And we've engaged people not only physically, but also mentally and socially. And we think that if we hit physical, intellectual, spiritual, and social needs of people, we will have them engaged. And it doesn't have to be in a church to be spiritual. It can be in a gym. It can be in a one-on-one class. It can be out on the water. It can be learning how to operate a kayak. There's a lot of different ways to achieve these goals. A lot of people don't have connections, so we want to encourage group classes where people can socialize and meet each other. Maybe that leads to them having lunch together or learning to play chess together, or in a variety of ways. It worked. I guess there's science behind it. I mean, you as a trainer, as a coach, I think when you stumble upon things that work, just keep doing them. And it's that repetition, that routine, and that familiarity creates a confidence in people that tomorrow is going to be just as good, if not better, than today. And for us, that's huge.
Yeah. I like that philosophy. What'd you call it? The Carmine's second law?
It was Einstein's second law, but it was actually Carmine's first law. And it was like I said, posture times strength equals balance. And I used to draw parallels. If you've spent a lot of time in gyms, there are a lot of guys who lifted a lot of weight, very, very strong men who couldn't even scratch their back. They would lean their back up against the corner of the wall and they would scratch it that way because they couldn't reach. There's no posture there. So as strong as that man is, he's still likely to fall. And we had some, statuesque women, 5'8", 5'9", 5'10", imperially slim with no muscle tone that were beginning to collapse because they had no strength. And those are two extreme examples, but without a combination of the two, we had a gap. We purchased some equipment from a company called Her Equipment, HUR, that did diagnostic balance assessments. And we have everybody in the building stand on this sensor board, and we put them through a series of exercises, 30-second exercises, standing still with your eyes open, standing still with your eyes closed. Then we put a slight pad underneath their feet where it's slightly unstable, and they stand on that with their eyes open. Then they stand on that with their eyes closed. And it's called Eye Balance, and it's from Her Equipment. And not only will it tell us in what direction people are most likely to fall, okay? In almost all cases, there would be a confession from these people upon reviewing the results that, yeah, that's the direction I did fall, but I didn't want to tell anybody. And like I said, sometimes we're the priest. We got a window into the future for people to say, your posture is skewed. Okay, there's microsensors in the board, in the sensor board, tell me what you do, in movement, in stasis, how you would most likely respond to any sort of a silly step or an irregular surface that you're walking on. And we can address those discrepancies and those weaknesses before the fall. And we can, I don't want to say prescribe because we're not doctors, but we can ascribe, some protocols and monitor them and then retest again in 3 months to see if we're making improvements. So we really put a lot of thought into it. We really put a lot of money into it. And I want to thank the company for all of that, to do some pretty cutting edge stuff. And it's just been wonderful. And, I have no idea how long it's going to continue, but it's just been such a great ride.
Well, I'm going to start teaching Carmen's Law in my classes. Talk similarly, but I'm going to give you proper credit and talk about that because I have a lot of students that, we talk about working with the elderly and they talk about balance training, but their concept of balance training sometimes is just simply, standing on a Basu ball or an unstable surface. And it's like, okay, yeah, that's great, but that's not necessarily going to help them in the long run preventing falls. And, this focus on strength really needs to be there for the elderly rather than just, I was kind of trained up in a philosophy of do more cardio for the heart as you get older and strength trainings for the young people. And I'm starting to realize it's really the opposite, that we can maintain the heart, but the muscles need to be maintained to be able to maintain that function. And, you mentioned about not using the word prescription.
Right.
I have an issue with the fact that for years in the exercise professions, we got away from it because, we were told we're not doctors, we shouldn't be prescribing. And we've allowed doctors to kind of take charge of care, and we've moved further and further away from that preventative side. And I say, as exercise scientists, we ought to be stealing back that right to say we are prescribing exercise because it is, as the American College of Sports Medicine says, it is medicine. So
yep.
Call it prescription. You are prescribing. Yep. And I am a doctor, but I'm not the kind of doctor that's allowed to prescribe medicine. So as my grandfather would say, I'm not a real doctor. But, I think, it is prescription. And the older population, from all my training and interactions, will respect the word of their doctor, and so when they're getting support from their doctor saying they need to exercise and they need to do these things that, we're trying to get them to do, they are more likely to do it. And so I encourage my students to use the word prescription, because if they think of it as prescription, they're more likely to do it. So you have my permission. I don't know what that's worth, but you have my permission to use the word
I actually
prescription.
have the permission out here, and it's a small community. There are a lot of small towns on East End of Long Island, and we have a doctor in charge at the facility, and he's been so cooperative and so um, conscious of the value that we can bring to these people that he will blindly send people after they are done with, I don't know, their stay in the hospital. If they've come out of PT, we have a physical therapy department that has absolutely no qualms. I'm trained in post therapy exercise and chronic illness and disease as well. So having that experience and the confidence of these people, they are turning people over to me and saying, you know what's best, do it. So ad hoc, I guess I have some prescribing, but I'm not allowed to use those words.
I think you should be able to, but so tell us a little bit about this Parkinson's and boxing.
Okay. I don't know. Did you see the video?
I didn't get a chance to look at I believe I've seen it in the past.
Yeah.
But since we talked earlier this week, I didn't get a chance to kind of pull it up. It's been a crazy week, but I'm pretty sure our mutual friend, John McGuire, who has been on this podcast, had shared the video with me a while back. So I got to hunt that down.
So without mentioning people by name again, because I really haven't cleared things with them, we had a member of our community move in who had Parkinson's. And to be quite honest, we have a significant subset of members with Parkinson's in varying degrees. So it caused us, and myself in particular, to have to do a lot of homework and find out how this physically affects people, how this mentally and emotionally affects people, what its track looks like, what its progression can look like, and what we could do. And one of the things that we found in reviewing other people's studies was that if we could create a fluidity and of motion, a continuity of motion, a rhythm, that the symptoms were relieved, and that there was a time lapse, a residue of benefit that existed after such activities took place. There was a group called Rock Steady Boxing that we were introduced to, and they actually asked if we would like to join Rock Steady Boxing. And one of the things my community is kind of protective of is our brand and our style and our uniqueness. So we decided not to formally partner with them, but we did bring them in for a couple of demonstrations. And off of it, we put a series of speed bags in and around our gym and the community. And the rat-a-tat-tat of a speed bag, if you've ever hit one, and I'm sure you have, okay, you can almost hear that. There's a rhythm to it. And not only did it work, but people became fascinated. It was almost like a Rubik's Cube for them. They had to figure this thing out, and it could be done. Now, I grew up, in gyms, and I put on gloves a few times, and John's put on gloves a few times, as so a very mutual friend of ours' father was a professional fighter and a trainer. So we spent a little time in his gym, and we learned how to hit a speed bag, how to hit a heavy bag, how to work in rhythm, and that 1 2 1 2 1 2. So I showed a lady one day. I said, "You want to try something?" And she said, "I could never do that." And I just said, "Just hit it with the fleshy part of your hand, and in a circular motion, one hand over the top, one after the other. Bop, 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 bop." And within 10 minutes, she had created a little bit of a rhythm. Then I said to her, can you try it one-handed? Bop, 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 bop. And then she did. And now, mind you, she's in a walker. So I was standing behind her to make sure that nothing would happen. Not only did I not have to grab her and hold on to her, okay, but she would put the walker aside and you could see her hips move and her shoulders move. And there came a flow and she started telling everybody. And people started coming to us in the Parkinson's subculture wanting to do this. It's really unique when the marketing people bring prospective buyers into the community, into the gym, and I show them around and they say, you know what speed bags here? And, it's like I said, people come here to live. They don't come here to die, the results are startling. And it's not my research. And I certainly did not invent this, but we adopted it because we thought it was such a conversation piece for people over dinner that they would sell the fitness department's benefits for us. And it's a tougher sell for me to get somebody to come to the gym than it is for somebody who lives there to talk to their friend to say, you got to check this out. And they started bringing their friends. Yeah. And people would come to me and say, listen, I really haven't announced to anybody that I have Parkinson's, but could you show me how to hit the bag? And I was like, yeah, well, you think I'll be labeled as a Parkinson's person? I said, I don't have Parkinson's. I hit the bag. Come on, let's get busy. It became aerobic. It became a rhythm. It might as well have been a dance class, Jeff. Because the rhythm it created, the endorphins that these people generated, the strength, the movement, the range of motion, all the things that we extol, we didn't have to force them out of people. It was fun. And you never have to ask a kid to work out. Kids don't work out. Kids play. And they get their activity by playing because it's fun. And we were able to tap into that, hey, you can work out and have fun at the same time thing purely by accident and purely because this one wonderful woman talked too much. And and it led to a lot of other possibilities for us. We took some of those results to people without Parkinson's and said, do you want to learn how to swim? Well, I don't know how to swim. Well, we had the NYU swim coach was one of my trainers. She had moved out east and she was the New York University swim coach. And I said, I want to teach people how to swim. And when you watch a 90-year-old with fear of water, planing, floating, relaxing, and learning how to swim at that age, it's fun. It's those episodes, they just became more and more common. And the Parkinson's group inspired so many people to, I had another thing I used to say to everybody. Why not you? Why not now? Tell me. Well, I can't do it now because I am recovering from, okay. When that's recovered, why not you? Well, my daughter's going to be coming to visit next month. No. Tell me. I need to have this conversation with you. And once we boiled it all down, it was usually fear. It was usually, I'm not sure I can do this. I don't want to fail. I don't want to embarrass myself. I don't want to hurt myself. This is not a comfort zone for me. Our charge, in my opinion, became to make it their comfort zone, to make it a place where they were empowered and not, overwhelmed. So it's been a great thing. That, like I said, the research is so strong with rhythm and Parkinson's. And you mentioned that you had a family member with Parkinson's. I didn't know that. I didn't realize that. So obviously this strikes home for you as well.
Yeah, actually, my father-in-law died of Parkinson's, and my mother's husband died of Parkinson's. And he was one that they came out to visit, and he hadn't been diagnosed yet. And they were walking the rental car, I think, from the airport, and I think that's how they got out. because I didn't pick him up because I saw him walking into the house and I'm like, he's got Parkinson's. I mean, immediately, there's that festation gait, the posture, and either my mom was in denial at the time or the doctor that they had been going to just wasn't, I don't want to say competent enough, but for whatever reasons, he didn't diagnose what was pretty obvious. And, I think we tend to, when people get to that age and in those circumstances, we just kind of give up. We think there's nothing that can be done. This is just going to progress and it's going to get worse. And I'm much more of a mindset. First of all, try and prevent it as much as possible, but let's see what we can do to counteract that as much as possible and open up those, there's interactions in the brain that are, many of them are just kind of, they're clogged with cobwebs and stuff like that are just preventing people from doing. And we tend to think because somebody is old, they can't learn something new. And when we get them doing something that they didn't think that they could do or they've never done before, that's like, bringing them back to their childhood. And I think that is probably the key or, the big secret in trying to unlock some of these things with Parkinson's disease is how do we bring that person to where we can unlock those neural pathways that just have been locked up for years.
I used to do an experiment. Well, not experiment. It was a question that I would ask people. I would ask the group. I would say, "What is the definition of impossible?" And the answers were the typical: something that you can't do. That's something that's never been done. Something that scientists say you can't do. So I mean, whatever. And I said, "You're close, but you're not exactly on it." The definition of impossible is that thing that you think you can't do. Okay? So what's impossible to you is very possible to me, and vice versa. And the point I made was we had a ceiling, a 9-foot ceiling in the gym, and I would jump up and I would palm the ceiling. And everybody was like, "Well, why did you do that?" I said, "Because I can, because it's possible. And I know that if I do it today, the odds are very good that I'll be able to do it tomorrow." So tomorrow would come and we'd start the class. And before the class started, I'd jump up and I'd palm the ceiling. And it was my way of showing people that I wasn't deteriorating. I was not losing my abilities. I was making sure that fresh in my brain was the notion that I was still plenty capable. And then we began to tackle impossible. Give me that thing that you think is impossible. I'll never get rid of this walker. Do you want to? Yeah. Do you want to try and take a few, steps here to see what we can do? How about we stop talking about what we can't do, focus on what we can do, and then expand upon that. Let's see how that goes. And we began to challenge this notion of impossible as being a personal limiting behavior. I can't do that. Why? Because I can't. Why? Because I can't. I know, but why? Because I just can't. And this is, that this is typical. And especially as people get older, this carries over into all walks of life. Well, I can't wear that dress anymore. I'm too old. Well, I can't wear that shirt anymore. I'm too old. I can't, wear a 2-piece bathing suit. I can't go to bars. I can't, whatever. I can't. And your bag full of I can'ts gets heavier and heavier to carry as you get older. And if you put it down and you break it down and look at it from what can I do, you can build upon that. You can expand your life. And people put themselves in a box, and then they begin to make that box smaller and smaller as their life goes on. And then eventually they're in this nice, small, comfortable little box, and they never want to come out. And I have 3 sons. They will never let me crawl in the box because I never let them crawl in it when they were kids. And I know they're going to pay me back. And I thank them for that today, okay, before this comes. This notion of what we can and can't do, it's all self-created. It just is, and you ever see that old guy who thinks he can do everything, Mm-hmm. What does everybody say? That guy's crazy. No, he's free.
Yeah.
He's liberated. He's confident. He believes in himself, and he's got the advantage of being old, and he doesn't care what you think.
Yeah.
So, to the extent that we can stay young in that thinking, I think translates over into our physical, manifestations and our capabilities. At least that's my theory. And if I'm wrong, I guess somebody can correct me when I get old. I don't know.
And see, you're 64 and you didn't call yourself old. So I think
No,
you're in that right mentality.
no, no.
Yeah.
I was a coach for a million years, and I still see people when they come back. And if you've ever coached, when one of your guys comes back or one of your girls comes back and they meet you, and if they're in a prolonged absence, they don't say, "Oh, hi, Carmine, nice to see you." They say the magic word. They say, "Hey, coach, how are you?" Okay. And that connection always kept me young because I knew I was connected with somebody that was younger than me, that was still in the learning phase, that could still teach me. And I had a kid come to me just a few years ago, and he was probably, I don't know, late 20s. And he said to me, "Coach, can I talk to you?" And I had coached him when he was in high school. And I said, "Sure." And he said, "I don't know what I want to be when I grow up." I said, "Why are you asking me?" He goes, "Because you always have good advice." I said, "I've never grown up. You're asking the wrong guy." And he goes, "Why can't you be serious?" I said, "I am." I said, "That's my point." I said, "You came to me because you like my attitude, my opinions, my perspective on things, and that perspective is rooted in that fact that I won't go down that old path. I won't. And I'll give you some advice, but my advice is trust yourself. You're doing great, And I don't have the ability to act mature. And I know that sounds silly, but I only have the ability to see things with wonder, with open mind, with amazement, to say, "Wow, I didn't know that." And every time I go through that scenario and I can learn something, I got younger, and it's what we try to teach, where I work. It's what I've tried to teach when I coach. I don't know. Philosophy in this field, I think, is so important, and mindset is so important. To talk somebody into thinking he can break an Olympic world record, that's not body, that's brain.
Yeah.
People don't break the Olympic record on a Tuesday in Dubuque, Iowa, just screwing around in the gym. They break it on the biggest stage in the world when they are mentally, physically, and emotionally ready to break it. That's why 60 or 70 world records have fallen in the last 2 weeks. 60 or 70 things that until this week, Jeff, were impossible and never
Yeah.
been done. Those people decided what was possible. They stopped talking about what was impossible, and they found the moment and they seized it. I don't know. I don't think that's physical. I really don't. I don't think you can do that on a Tuesday in a gym with your friends. I think you've got to be in a mindset that says, "I'm going to succeed here." To create that in senior populations is priceless. It's my own little contribution, I think. And, that's all I got.
Let's see. We're coming up on an hour, so I probably want to use your time wisely. I think we've covered a lot of the questions that I have. Probably we could talk for hours here. I know that. So many things I want to ask you that are probably a little off of this topic. So, what are you? I mean, you've kind of already answered this to an extent, but what are you personally doing to age successfully?
Well, without getting into too much detail, I was 6 years ago going to be the cover story for the New York City Marathon. I had run one when my first son was born. He was born with a lot of problems. He was born prematurely. We weren't sure he was going to make it. He did. And as soon as he was born, I was like, I got to do something. So I put on sneakers, and I had never been a runner. I was a wrestler, and I had a cardiovascular system, but I had never run, per se. And I completed a marathon in just under 4 hours, which I thought was pretty cool. Hated it. Put the sneakers down. I ran recreationally, and I'd run a 5K and a 10K and things like that, but never really went down that road again. And in 2015, Yeah, 2016. Excuse me. I put an application into the New York City Marathon. Never thought I'd be in, and they ask you for a story. So I put a story out of, I about how I had um, done this once for the benefit of my son, and now my son had just gotten married, and I just thought that I would do it again for him and his wife and bring closure to this whole thing. And the marathon people accepted me, and they asked me to train and to wear a microphone because they wanted to talk to me throughout the race. And I was going to be like a cover story in New York Marathon magazine or whatever it was. I don't know. So I was out training one night, and I was just after work. I went out for like a 2 mile run, and I suffered a sudden cardiac death. And I literally just took a stride and was listening to Freebird coming right around a corner, and it wasn't going very fast, wasn't going very long, but I was listening to Freebird, and the next thing I know, I shook and I was gone. I just, um, I woke up and I was sitting in the middle of the street, and there was a truck parked right in front of me, and a man got out of the passenger side, and I thought, that's kind of strange. He's all by himself. Why is he getting out of the passenger side of the vehicle? And he came over to me and he asked me if I was okay. And I said, yeah, I think so. And he said, you know where you are? I said, yeah. And he said, what can I do? I said, I don't know. Give me a ride home. So he gave me a ride home, and then he followed me into the house, which I thought was weird. And I was like, what's up? And he says to my wife, he needs to go to the hospital. And I was like, no, I'm all right. And he said, you had no pulse and you weren't breathing for about 3 minutes when I got there. He goes, I couldn't revive you. He goes, I was running back to my truck to call 911. He goes, and then you sat up. He said, so I don't really know, you know, what's wrong here. But it turned out I had two 99% blockages in my Widowmaker, which were undiagnosed. And obviously, I didn't run the marathon. I did, however, um, gain a whole new perspective. um, I had an opportunity to re-engage my whole fitness mentality on a different level. Um, Obviously, I can still run, and I do. I just don't run big distances. I can still lift. I just don't lift to set world records. My goals found new focus. I'm about to become a grandfather in the next couple of days for the first time. I'd like to think that I got a break and an opportunity to stick around and meet this young lady that I'm really looking forward to meeting. Um, the, the 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 journey was less than a straight line, but I think I got to where I was supposed to get. I think philosophically, physically, emotionally, I probably got it all on the same page. You know, when you're younger, you fight with yourself, you fight with everybody. I think, I'm still a work in progress. Don't get me wrong, and John will tell you. um, but I think I got it on the same page, and I think it enabled me to empathize with some people and to reach people that I normally would not have been able to reach, either through a lack of patience, a lack of understanding, or a lack of empathy. Having gone through this, uh, which I don't recommend, okay, but having gone through it, um, you I don't know, the sun's a little brighter. The problem's a little smaller. It just I don't know. I don't want to say I'm getting old because I won't say it. Okay, but I'm grateful that I've had the chance to get older, and it's been a great trip. It really has been. I never thought I would be doing what I'm doing now. It wasn't a population that I had connection with. It wasn't anything I had experience with. I was busy trying to make, you know, wrestlers into county champions, and baseball players, getting some kind of an offer from a college, or, helping a kid get their education or things like that. Everything I had done before was for people whose future I saw as bright and expanding and improving. And to go into the um, older population, I had always seen that as a sundowning phase for people. I was wrong. I was wrong. to just another sunset. It's another sunrise, another sunset, another sunrise. It's just, I don't know, been a unique way of looking at things. I wouldn't trade it for the world. I know that my time is coming to a close. I've got some wonderful people, and a lot of my day-to-day management has been turned over to someone that I hired and trained, and she's doing a wonderful job. And I don't know, maybe I'll move in there someday. Who knows? But it's been great. Jeff, I think I've lost volume from you.
I was muted. So I really like that story. That really kind of struck me. And I have a different spelling now of the word gratitude. I've started spelling it with 2 T's, combining gratitude and attitude. And I think that's really an important component of aging, is that we have that grateful attitude. And that's a huge component of us being able to age successfully. Personally,
I'm going to steal that one.
Oh, you can have it. Yeah, I'm borrowing your Carmine's Law. You can borrow gratitude, and I have a great gratitude in you doing so. So, any way that we can help inspire one another, that's what keeps us aging well. So I really appreciate the conversation today. This was awesome. I might have to have you on again sometime. You and John, but I might have to have you and John both on here just for the banter back and forth, to hear the stories. And because I think you both are aging very well. I mean, John has, I lived with John almost over 20, almost 30 years ago. And he was in horrible shape back then and really kind of turned things around. And he looks to me younger now than he did back then.
Yeah. Well, and I've known John in several iterations. I knew him as a kid. I knew him as a star athlete. And I knew, I've seen the struggles and I've seen the recoveries. So, I like those people. Those are my people, people who've walked a mile and, lived to talk about it. So, yeah. Hey, if you want me back on, I'm happy to come. It's always good to talk, and it's I don't know. I hope people have learned something. I learned something about myself. Sometimes I'm surprised when things come out of my mouth, and I'm like, I didn't realize I thought that way, but apparently I do. So, anyway, thank you so much for having me. It's been great, and I wish your son all the best of luck this weekend.
I do too. So I'll have to let you know how he does. I always end with keep aging well. Thank you for listening. I hope you benefited from today's podcast. And until next time, keep aging well.